A wrong number usually ends with an awkward apology. For Carol Hernandez, it ended with blood on marble floors and a king kneeling at her feet. Trapped in her own kitchen with a fractured jaw, hiding from an ex-boyfriend who swore she'd never leave him alive, she tried to text her cousin for help. Her hands were shaking too hard. She mistyped one digit. That message didn't go to her cousin. It went to the encrypted personal line of Guido Lorenzo, the city's most feared Mafia don. A number that hadn't received a civilian text in over 5 years. What happens when a dying waitress accidentally summons the white-haired devil himself? The answer is brutal, beautiful, and utterly transformative. Before we continue with Carol's story, if you're already hooked, please show some love by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Hit that notification bell too. You definitely don't want to miss what Guido does when he finds Carol. Your support helps me create more stories like this one, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's see what happens next. The sound of a human skull meeting kitchen tile is distinct. It isn't a sharp crack like a dish breaking. It's a wet, hollow thud that echoes through the entire room and leaves a ringing silence in its wake. Carol Hernandez heard that sound before she felt the pain. Then the warmth came, spreading across the back of her head, sticky and terrifying, pooling beneath her cheek as she lay motionless on the cold linoleum floor. Her vision blurred, the overhead light fracturing into a dozen swimming halos. She tried to breathe, but her jaw wouldn't cooperate. Something was broken. Something was very, very wrong. "Look what you made me do." Charles Kyle's voice drifted down from somewhere above her.
Calm.
Almost conversational. That was the worst part about Charles. He didn't rage like the abusers in the movies. He didn't scream or throw things in fits of uncontrolled fury. He was methodical, deliberate. A man who worked in insurance claims during the day, who knew exactly how to cause pain in ways that could be explained away as accidents. Kitchen floors are slippery. She must have fallen. You know how clumsy Carol can be. Usually he kept it contained. Tonight he'd lost control. Carol clutched at the floor, her fingernails scraping uselessly against the linoleum. Every breath sent a spike of agony through her face. She looked up at him through the haze of tears and blood. He was straightening his collar, staring down at her with a look of mild irritation, as if she were a spilled drink rather than the woman who'd made him coffee that morning. "I'm going out for a drive," Charles said, stepping over her legs like they were a pile of laundry. "Clear my head." "And Carol?" He paused at the doorway, keys jangling in his hand. "If you're not here when I get back, I will find you. And we'll have to finish this conversation." He grabbed his jacket off the hook and walked out. The apartment door slammed shut. The deadbolt slid home with a finality that made Carol's entire body flinch. She waited 3 minutes. She counted them by the erratic, terrified drumbeat of her own pulse echoing in her ears. When she was certain he was gone, she dragged herself across the floor. The pain was obliterating. Every movement felt like her skull was splitting open. She knew what was broken. Her jaw, probably fractured, and likely a concussion severe enough that she shouldn't close her eyes. But the bleeding. God, the bleeding wouldn't stop. Her phone. She needed her phone. It had skittered across the room during the assault, landing somewhere near the refrigerator. Carol pulled herself forward, inch by agonizing inch, leaving a smeared crimson trail across the white tiles. Her apron, still tied around her waist from her shift at the diner, was soaked through. Finally, her fingers closed around the phone. The screen was cracked but still glowing. 11:47 p.m. The battery icon showed 12%. She needed to call someone. Her cousin Maria. Maria would come. Maria wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't tell her she deserved this for staying, wouldn't give her that look of pity mixed with judgment. Carol's vision swam as she unlocked the phone. Her fingers were slick with blood, trembling so violently she could barely tap the screen. She pulled up Maria's contact, but her thumb slipped. The messaging app opened instead. "Fine," A text. Faster anyway. She started typing, each letter a monumental effort. He left me bleeding, can't move please. Her thumb hovered over Maria's name in the recent contacts, but her vision doubled. The names blurred together. She tapped what she thought was Maria's contact and hit send. The message disappeared into the void. Carol let the phone drop from her hand, her cheek pressed against the cold floor. The overhead light was fading now, or maybe it was her consciousness. She couldn't tell anymore. She didn't see the phone screen light up 30 seconds later. She didn't see the 3 words that appeared in response. I'm coming. But somewhere across the city, in a study lined with first edition books and Renaissance paintings acquired through means the IRS would never fully understand, Guido Lorenzo stood from his leather chair so abruptly that his glass of Macallan 25 toppled onto the Persian rug. His second-in-command, Dante, looked up in alarm. Boss. Guido was staring at a phone he kept in his desk drawer. A phone with a number only 6 people in the world possessed. A phone that was only to be used in the most dire of emergencies. A phone that had just received a message from an unknown number. From someone who was bleeding. Someone who couldn't move. Someone who needed him. Get the car, Guido said, his voice like winter itself. Now. He grabbed his wine-colored suit jacket from the back of his chair, already moving toward the door. The white-haired devil had just been summoned by a stranger's desperate mistake. And hell itself was about to follow him into the night. Carol Hernandez didn't know it yet, but she had just sent a message to the one man in the city who could save her. She also didn't know that by morning, Charles Kyle would be the one bleeding on a kitchen floor. And that her life, her small, invisible, disposable life, was about to become the most protected, most valuable, most dangerous thing in Guido Lorenzo's empire. All because of one mistyped digit, one wrong number. One desperate plea that reached exactly the right devil. The study was silent except for the ticking of a 1920s French mantel clock, a piece Guido had acquired from a banker who'd made the mistake of shorting the Lorenzo family businesses. Guido Lorenzo sat in his leather chair, reviewing acquisition reports for his legitimate holdings. At 42, he built an empire that straddled both worlds, the respectable veneer of real estate and imports, and the shadow kingdom that truly ran the city's pulse. His white blonde hair, the feature that had earned him the nickname Il Diavolo Bianco, caught the lamplight as he reached for his whiskey. That's when the drawer buzzed. Guido froze. The burner phone. The emergency line. A number given only to his most trusted captains, to be used when the family itself was under existential threat. He pulled open the drawer, his jaw tightening. The message was from an unknown number. He left me bleeding, can't move please. Not a captain. Not a coded family emergency. A stranger. Someone dying. Dante looked up from the corner where he'd been reviewing security footage. Boss. How many people have this number? Guido's voice was ice. 6. Your inner circle. No one else. Guido stared at the message. Every instinct told him it was a trap. A setup. The Calabrese family had been testing his borders for months. This could be bait. But something in those words, the lack of punctuation, the grammatical errors, the raw desperation, felt real. Can't move. He typed 3 words. I'm coming. Then he stood, grabbing his wine-colored suit jacket. Boss, we don't know who. Get the car. Now. Guido's tone left no room for argument. Trace this number. I want an address in 60 seconds. Sir, this could be. Guido turned, and Dante went silent. The white-haired devil's eyes held something his second had rarely seen, urgency. Someone reached out to this line for help, Guido said quietly. That means they're either dying or desperate enough to wish they were. Either way, I respond. And if it's a trap? Guido's smile was cold as winter. Then someone is about to learn why they shouldn't have used a dying woman as bait. 60 seconds later, Guido Lorenzo was in his Mercedes, racing through city streets toward an address in Carol Hernandez's neighborhood. He didn't know her name yet, but he would. and anyone who'd heard her would learn theirs was now written in the devil's ledger. The apartment door was unlocked. That was the first sign something was very wrong. Guido pushed it open slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the Beretta at his hip. Dante flanked him, weapon drawn. The two men who'd built an empire on controlled violence moved through the doorway like shadows. Then Guido saw the blood trail. It started at the kitchen and smeared across white linoleum in desperate, dragging streaks. At the end of it lay a young woman in a waitress uniform, her red hair matted with blood, her phone just inches from her outstretched fingers. She wasn't moving. "Clear the apartment," Guido ordered, already crossing to her. He knelt in the blood, custom Italian shoes be damned, and gently turned her face toward him. Her skin was cold, lips nearly blue. But when he pressed 2 fingers to her throat, he found a pulse.
Faint.
Thready.
But there.
Carol Hernandez, Dante called from the other room, reading from a stack of mail. 26. Works at Morton's Diner on 5th. Call Dr. Russo. Tell him I'm bringing someone in.
Now.
Guido slid his arms beneath her, one under her knees, one behind her shoulders. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in a way that made fury coil in his chest. Who had done this? Who had left this woman bleeding on her kitchen floor like garbage? As he lifted her, Carol's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, delirious. "You came," she whispered, the words barely audible through her broken jaw. "I said I would." Her eyes closed again, but he felt her body relax infinitesimally against his chest.
Trust.
From a woman who had every reason to trust no one. "Boss, the police will. Let them come." Guido carried Carol through the apartment door and down the stairs. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors drawn by the commotion. A police cruiser was pulling up, lights flashing. Guido Lorenzo, the white-haired devil himself, walked through them all in his wine-colored suit, carrying a broken red-headed waitress in his arms like she was made of glass and starlight. 2 officers approached, hands on their weapons. "Sir, we're going to need you to—" "No," Guido said simply. "You're not." Something in his voice made them step back. Dante opened the Mercedes door. Guido slid into the back seat, never adjusting his hold on Carol. She was bleeding onto his $1,000 suit. He didn't care. "St. Catherine's," he ordered. "My private wing." As the car pulled away, Guido looked down at the woman in his arms. She'd sent a desperate message into the void, and somehow, impossibly, it had found him. Now she was his responsibility, his to protect. And God help whoever had hurt her. Hey friends, if you're as invested in Carol and Guido's story as I am, please hit that like button and drop a comment below. I want to know, what do you think Guido should do to Charles? And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, it's going to be intense. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's see what happens when the white-haired devil goes hunting. Charles Kyle made it exactly 47 miles before Guido's people found him. He was at a rest stop off I-90, buying coffee and a breakfast sandwich, probably congratulating himself on how well he'd taught Carol a lesson. Maybe planning his return, preparing the apology that would sound sincere enough to get back in the door. He never got to finish his coffee. 2 men in dark suits flanked him at the counter. A third blocked the exit. Charles's insurance adjuster brain recognized the situation immediately. Coordinated, professional, irreversible. "Charles Kyle?" the larger one asked, though it wasn't really a question. 20 minutes later, Charles was in a warehouse in the industrial district, zip-tied to a metal chair. The space was empty except for a drain in the concrete floor and a workbench covered with tools that gleamed under fluorescent lights. Then Guido Lorenzo walked in. Charles had never seen him before, but he knew. Everyone in the city knew the stories of Il Diavolo Bianco, the white-haired devil, the man who'd consolidated 5 warring families under one banner through a combination of strategic brilliance and terrifying violence. I don't know what this is about," Charles stammered. Guido said nothing. He simply removed his wine-colored jacket, folded it carefully, and placed it on a clean surface. Then he rolled up his sleeves. Carol Hernandez, Guido said quietly. Say her name. Charles's face went pale. That's between me and my girlfriend. This is. The first blow came so fast Charles didn't see it. Guido's fist connected with his ribs, the same ribs Charles had fantasized about breaking on Carol. The crack was audible. Charles screamed. That was one rib, Guido said, his voice perfectly calm. Carol has a fractured jaw, a severe concussion, and enough internal bleeding that my surgeon wasn't sure she'd survive the night. So we're going to be here a while, Charles, because you're going to feel every single thing you did to her. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. You left her bleeding on a kitchen floor, Guido continued, as if Charles hadn't spoken. You walked away. You told her you'd come back to finish the conversation. Another blow. Another rib. Charles sobbed, trying to curl in on himself, but the zip ties held him in place. Here's what's going to happen, Guido said, picking up a towel to wipe blood from his knuckles. You're going to leave this city. Tonight. And you're never going to speak her name again. You're not going to call her, text her, think about her. She is dead to you. Do you understand? Yes, please. Because if you ever come near her again. Guido leaned in close, his gray eyes holding nothing but winter and death. I will find you. And next time, Charles, I won't stop at ribs. He straightened, nodding to his men. Clean him up. Give him bus fare. Make sure he's on the Midnight Express to anywhere. As Guido walked toward the door, Charles called out, voice broken. Who is she to you? Guido paused, considering the question. Someone who asked for help, he said finally, and got exactly the right wrong number. The warehouse door closed behind him, leaving Charles Kyle bleeding and broken, a message written in bone and terror for anyone who might threaten what was now under Guido Lorenzo's protection. Carol Hernandez didn't know it yet, but she'd just become the most dangerous woman to touch in the entire city, because the white-haired devil had claimed her as his own. Carol woke to softness. That was the first sign she wasn't home. Her apartment mattress was lumpy, the springs poking through in 3 places she'd learned to avoid. This was different. Egyptian cotton. Silk pillows. The kind of bed she'd only seen in magazines left behind by customers at the diner. She opened her eyes slowly, wincing at the light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her jaw ached, but it was a dull throb now, not the screaming agony she remembered. Someone had bandaged her head, and 4 ran from her arm to a bag hanging beside the bed. You're awake. Carol turned, too quickly. Pain lanced through her skull. A woman in scrubs stood beside the bed, checking monitors Carol hadn't noticed. Professional. Efficient. I'm Dr. Russo's nurse, Angela. You're safe here. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. Where? Carol's voice came out as a rasp. The Lorenzo estate. Mr. Lorenzo brought you here after? Angela's expression softened. After he found you. The Lorenzo estate. Carol's heart began to race, the monitor beside her bed beeping faster. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. Please don't be afraid, Angela said gently. You're under his protection now. No one can hurt you here. Over the next 3 days, Carol learned what protection meant in Guido Lorenzo's world. Dr. Russo visited twice daily, a renowned surgeon who normally treated diplomats and billionaires. Her meals arrived on fine china, nothing from a hospital cafeteria. When she finally asked for her phone, Angela explained it had been destroyed, but a replacement was coming. The psychological scars were harder to treat than the physical ones. Carol flinched every time the door opened. She couldn't sleep without the lights on. Once, when a male orderly entered too quickly, she threw a water glass, shattering it against the wall. He'd backed away immediately, hands raised, apologizing. On the 4th day, Guido came. He knocked first, a courtesy no one else had bothered with. When Carol said, "Come in," He entered slowly, giving her time to see him, to process. He wasn't wearing the wine-colored suit. Instead, he wore simple black trousers and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His white blonde hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Miss Hernandez," he said, staying near the door. "May I sit?" Carol nodded, unable to speak. He took the chair by the window, not the one close to her bed, respecting her space. "How are you feeling?" I don't understand," Carol whispered. "Why did you come? Why did you save me?" Guido was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes studying her with an intensity that should have frightened her, but somehow didn't. "Because you asked," he said simply. "And because no one should die alone on a kitchen floor, reaching out for help that never comes." Something in his voice told Carol he knew that feeling intimately. "What happened to Charles?" "He's alive," Guido said. "And he's gone. He'll never touch you again." "That's a promise I intend to keep." Carol felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. For the first time in 2 years, she believed she might actually be safe. A week after waking in the Lorenzo mansion, Carol could walk without assistance. Her jaw was healing, the swelling reduced enough that she could speak normally, even if talking for too long made it ache. She'd expected to be discharged, sent back to her apartment with some money and a warning to never speak of this place. Instead, Guido invited her to dinner. Not in her room, in the main house. Angela helped her dress, providing clothes that actually fit, a simple black dress that was somehow both elegant and comfortable. Carol stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Without the bruises, without the fear in her eyes, she looked different. Guido was waiting in a private dining room that overlooked the estate gardens. He stood when she entered, pulling out her chair himself. "You look well," he said. "I look like someone who doesn't belong here," Carol replied, then immediately wished she could take it back. But Guido smiled, a real smile, not the cold expression she'd seen in news photos. "Neither did I once." Dinner was surprisingly simple: pasta carbonara, fresh bread, a wine Carol couldn't pronounce but tasted like velvet. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Guido set down his fork. "I have something for you." He slid a small box across the table. Inside was a phone, new, expensive, and a gold watch with an elegant mother-of-pearl face. "The phone has one number programmed," Guido explained.
"Mine."
"The actual one, not the emergency line. You can reach me anytime, day or night." Carol picked up the watch, her fingers trembling. "I can't accept this. This is..." "The watch belonged to my mother," Guido said quietly. "She wore it every day until she died. It's one of the few things I have left of her." Carol's eyes widened. "Then I definitely can't. Please." His voice held something raw. "When I received your text, I was sitting in my study, reviewing numbers, planning expansions. My life is a calculation, Miss Hernandez. Risk versus reward. Territory versus cost. I haven't felt anything human in years." He met her eyes. Then my phone buzzed. A stranger, bleeding, alone, asking for help. And for the first time in a decade, I felt something other than ambition. I felt necessary. Carol's throat tightened. "You didn't text the wrong number," Guido continued. "You texted exactly the right one. You reminded me that beneath all of this," he gestured at the mansion, the wealth, the empire, "I'm still someone who can choose to save rather than destroy." "Why the watch?" Carol whispered. "Because your time is your own now, under my protection. And because..." He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his features. "Because I'd like you to stay. Not as a prisoner, as a guest. Until you decide what comes next." Carol looked at the watch, at the phone, at this dangerous man who'd become her savior. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll stay." The relief on Guido's face was unmistakable. Neither of them knew that across the city, Charles Kyle was about to make a decision that would turn their fragile peace into a war. Loving the story so far? Please show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Carol should trust Guido completely, or should she be more cautious? What would you do in her situation? Don't forget to turn on those notifications because Chapter 6 is about to shake everything up. Thank you so much for being here with Carol and Guido's journey. Now, let's see what Charles is up to. Charles Kyle had been in Philadelphia for exactly 9 days when pride overrode survival instinct. 9 days of sleeping in a motel that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. 9 days of seeing Carol's face every time he closed his eyes, not bleeding on the floor where he'd left her, but safe in the arms of Guido Lorenzo. 9 days of a city's whispers reaching him even here. The white-haired devil has a woman now. Red-headed.
Pretty.
Untouchable. His woman. The humiliation burned worse than his still healing ribs. That's when he made the call. I have information, Charles said into the burner phone he'd bought with his last $50. About Lorenzo. About his routes, his schedule. Everything. The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Calabrese, head of the family that had been testing Guido's borders for months. A man whose hatred for the Lorenzo empire was legendary. Why would you betray Lorenzo? Marcus asked, suspicion thick in his tone. I'm not betraying him. He's not my boss. Charles's voice turned bitter. But he has something of mine. And I want her back. There was a pause. Then, the redhead. The waitress. Her name is Carol. I don't care what her name is. Marcus's voice sharpened with interest. But if you're saying you can give me Lorenzo's patterns, his security details, his movements, then maybe we can help each other. Charles leaned forward in the grimy motel room, his reflection staring back from a cracked mirror. He looked like hell. Broken. Beaten. But Carol was living in a mansion, wearing expensive clothes, probably sleeping in silk sheets. With him. I can give you everything, Charles said. His morning routes. When he moves between properties. When his guard is lightest. I watch the news coverage. I saw which cars he uses, which men surround him. And in exchange? When you move against him, I want in. And when it's done, I want Carol back.
She's mine.
She just needs to remember that. Marcus Calabrese laughed, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the stupidest. Lorenzo broke 3 of your ribs and let you live as a courtesy. You want to go back for more? She texted him by mistake, Charles said, his voice rising. It was supposed to be her cousin. A wrong number. That's all. She's not his. She's mine. Another pause. Then, fine. Come back to the city. We'll meet. You give me what you have, and when we take down the Lorenzo operation, you can have your waitress back. When? Soon, Marcus promised. Very soon. Lorenzo's gotten comfortable. Distracted. That makes him vulnerable. Charles Kyle hung up the phone, a twisted smile spreading across his face. Carol thought she was safe. Guido thought his reputation was enough to protect her. They were both wrong. In 3 days, Charles would be back in the city, meeting with the Calabrese family in a warehouse near the docks. He'd spread out everything he knew, maps, timelines, patterns he'd obsessively memorized from news footage and social media. And in 2 weeks, the Calabrese family would make their move. Not against Guido directly. That would be suicide. But against the Lorenzo mansion itself. Against the one thing Guido, Lorenzo, had allowed himself to care about in over a decade. Against Carol. The white-haired devil was about to learn that even kings can bleed when you target their hearts. Carol found Guido in the estate's gym at dawn, moving through a training routine that was equal parts violence and poetry. His shirt was off, revealing scars that told stories she wasn't sure she wanted to know. He stopped when he saw her in the doorway. Teach me, she said. Teach you what? How to never be a victim again. Guido studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is. The training started that morning. Self-defense basics first. How to break a grip, where to strike for maximum impact, how to create distance when cornered. Guido was patient but demanding, correcting her form, pushing her past the point where her body wanted to quit. Again, he'd say when she stumbled. And Carol would get up. Again. And again. Over the next 2 weeks, the sessions evolved. Guido taught her to shoot, starting with a small .38 revolver. The first time she held it, her hands shook so badly she couldn't aim. "It's all right to be afraid," Guido said, standing behind her, his hands steadying hers. "Fear keeps you alive. But you can't let it control you." The third time Carol hit the center target, Guido's smile was genuine pride. They trained in the mornings and ate dinner together each evening, conversations flowing from survival tactics to books, from Carol's dreams of opening her own restaurant to Guido's admission that he'd once wanted to be an architect. "What happened?" Carol asked. "My father happened. His empire. His enemies. His blood." Guido's expression darkened. "Some inheritances you can't refuse." One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, Carol found herself on the floor, exhausted, laughing despite the pain. Guido sat beside her, handing her a water bottle. "What's funny?" "A month ago, I was terrified of my own shadow," Carol said. "Now I'm learning to fight from a mob boss. My life is insane." "Your life is yours," Guido corrected gently. "That's what matters." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. Something that had been building since the moment he'd carried her bleeding from her apartment. "Guido," Carol started, but he shook his head. "Not yet," he said softly. "Not while you're still healing. Not while you might feel obligated, because I saved you. When you're ready, when you're strong enough to choose freely, then we'll talk about this." Carol's heart thundered in her chest. "And if I'm already ready? Then humor me," Guido said with a small smile. "Let me be sure you're choosing me, not just safety." That night, Carol stood in front of her mirror, wearing workout clothes, her muscles sore but strong. She looked different now. Not just healed, transformed. She was becoming someone Charles Kyle would never recognize. Someone who could stand beside a king rather than hide behind him. She just didn't know how soon she'd have to prove it. The attack came at 2:47 a.m. on a moonless Tuesday. Carol woke to the sound of breaking glass and gunfire. For a split second, she was back in her apartment, Charles standing over her. Then training kicked in. She rolled out of bed, grabbed the .38 from her nightstand. Guido had insisted she keep it close, and moved to the door. The hallway was chaos. Guards running, shouting, weapons drawn. Dante appeared, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "Miss Hernandez, get to the safe room." An explosion rocked the east wing. The lights flickered and died, emergency generators humming to life. "Where's Guido?" Carol demanded. "Coordinating defense downstairs." "Please, you need to." Carol was already running. She found him in the main hall, transformed into the white-haired devil the city feared. His white-blonde hair was stark against the darkness, his eyes cold as winter, barking orders to his men with lethal precision. "North perimeter is breached. Redirect teams 3 and 5. Someone check on." He saw Carol and his composure cracked. "Carol, what are you doing here? You should be in the safe room." "I'm not hiding," she said firmly. "This isn't a training session." More gunfire. Closer now. Windows shattered in the drawing room. Men in tactical gear poured through, and suddenly the mansion became a war zone. Guido moved like death incarnate, each shot precise, each movement calculated. Carol watched the man she'd been having dinner with vanish, replaced by the legend who'd unified 5 families through blood and terror. But even legends can be caught off guard. Charles Kyle stepped through the smoke, a gun in his shaking hand. His eyes were wild, fixed on Carol with obsessive intensity. "Found you," he breathed. Everything happened in slow motion. Guido turned, saw Charles, raised his weapon. But Calabrese soldiers flanked from the side, opening fire. Guido went down, his shoulder erupting in crimson. No! Carol screamed. Charles advanced, his weapon trained on Guido's fallen form. She's mine, Lorenzo. She was always mine. You had no right. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Guido, wounded and bleeding, looked up at Carol, not with commands or orders, with trust, with a question in his gray eyes. What do you choose? Carol raised her .38, her hands steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. I was never yours, Charles, she said clearly. I'm my own. And she fired.
Wow.
We're at the climax, and I need to know, are you Team Carol and Guido? Drop a comment with your favorite moment from the story so far. If you're on the edge of your seat like I am, please smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the finale. Hit those notifications too. You'll want to see how this all ends. Thank you so much for following this journey with me. Now, let's finish this story. The bullet caught Charles in the shoulder, a mirror of Guido's wound. He dropped his weapon, staggering backward, shock written across his face. You shot me, he gasped. I learned from the best, Carol replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Dante's men swarmed in, securing Charles and the remaining Calabrese soldiers. The breach was contained. The war was over for now. Carol dropped her weapon and ran to Guido. He was sitting up, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, his face pale but his eyes alert. When he saw her, relief flooded his features. You should have hidden, he said, but there was no heat in it. I told you. I'm not hiding anymore. Carol knelt beside him, her hands checking his wound with the efficiency she'd learned from Dr. Russo's nurses. It's through and through. You'll live. Thanks to you. Their eyes met, and in that moment, with gunpowder smoke still hanging in the air and sirens approaching in the distance, something fundamental clicked into place between them. I'm here now, Carol whispered, echoing the words he'd texted that first night. I came for you. Guido reached up with his good hand, cupping her face. I know. You always do. Later, after Dr. Russo had patched them both up, Guido's shoulder bandaged, Carol's hands wrapped where the gun's recoil had bruised them, they stood together on the mansion's balcony overlooking the city. Dawn was breaking over the skyline, painting everything gold and crimson. Charles will talk, Guido said quietly. The Calabrese family won't let this go. This was just the opening move. I know. Carol stood beside him, wearing his jacket over her torn dress, the gold watch he'd given her still on her wrist. You could still leave, Guido offered, though the words clearly pained him. I could set you up somewhere safe. A new identity. Protection. You'd never have to look over your shoulder again. Carol turned to face him fully. Is that what you want? I want you safe. That's not what I asked. Guido was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers. I want you here, beside me. But Carol, this life, my life, it's dangerous. There will be more nights like tonight. More enemies. More blood. Then teach me, Carol said simply. Keep teaching me how to survive, how to fight, how to stand beside a king instead of behind him. You'd really stay? In this world. Carol thought about the waitress she'd been. Invisible, disposable, terrified. Then she looked at the woman she was becoming, strong, protected, feared. A woman who'd saved the most dangerous man in the city because he'd once saved her. A month ago, I texted the wrong number in desperation, she said. Tonight, I chose to stay for the right reasons. Not because you saved me, but because I want to save you too. Guido pulled her close with his good arm, pressing his forehead to hers. You already have. They stood there as the sun rose over their city, a Mafia don and a waitress who'd accidentally become his queen, knowing that somewhere in the shadows, enemies were regrouping. knowing that the Lorenzo War had truly just begun. But for now, in this moment, they were safe. They were together. And Carol Hernandez, who'd once believed herself disposable, had become the most valuable, most protected, most dangerous thing in Guido Lorenzo's entire empire. All because of 3 words: I'm coming. And 3 more: I'm here now. Thank you so much for going on this incredible journey with Carol and Guido. If you love the story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling romance and suspense. I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite part? Would you want to see a sequel about the Lorenzo War? Your feedback means everything to me and helps me create more content you'll love. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right one. See you in the next story.